You seem to still be up there somewhere.
Maybe I am. There are flying saucers.
Supposing they're Martians or something in there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asherz, and this is...
Tobias.
Tobias! I'm excited to hear this part this time, because I kind of know. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. As well as I'm sure you are aware, I have been very busy getting ready for the Mothman Festival, of course, which is coming up this weekend. So that's been occupying a lot of my time. But I still found some time, in addition to working on my next book, to go out hiking with my good buddy, Adam Benedict, from over at the Pine Barrens Institute. And so what we like to do is, well, we're all friends. So like Adam and his wife, Amber, and me and my wife, Emily, like we're all friends. And so we'll like go out to dinner, and then afterwards we'll get in like a good hike. And if it's someplace weird, great. Although, we live in southern Wisconsin, and so there aren't very many spots where you can go hiking here that aren't within a dozen miles of a supposed humanoid or Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever sighting, right? And so we did some of that. And that was pretty fun. I didn't see any Bigfoot or Dogman or anything, but I brought my thermal camera out. And I'm sure if these campers realized that I was testing it on them, that I looked pretty fucking creepy. Because literally, yeah, because I didn't realize how close this trail kind of cut to these campsites. And so I would see kind of through the trees, maybe just like the hint of a campfire or something. And I'm like, oh shit, well, this is a perfect opportunity for me to see how well this thermal camera would do picking up like a humanoid creature, right, through a bunch of woods. And I tried it out, and it works great. Like I could see them pretty clearly, and definitely make out their shapes and everything. I didn't record it because I'm not actually creepy. I just,
You just played the part.
Yeah, I mean, I just tried it on once. But yeah, I mean, it was it like horror movie slasher villain level creepy? A little bit. I felt weird about it, but it was still really cool because I got to see how well this thermal camera worked in that environment. So, it's a give and take.
I mean, the important part is that you felt weird about it, because then that's a good thing, right? Like you shouldn't be like, well, I kind of dig this, like.
Right? Yeah, it didn't like awaken anything in me,
You're like, oh, well, I was spying on this family, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah, right. Oh, I think I'm going to go out again tonight. Maybe the next night. Maybe every night. We'll see.
I've been looking through their mail recently. Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. Did you guys find anything? I saw your guys' sweet matching outfits that you had.
We have matching adventure vests. I found one. I think it was on Amazon or something. And so I put it on my wish list for Christmas. And I think my in-laws got it for me, actually. And it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of pockets. It's like a mesh vest. So it's very breathable. Like it's for hiking and camping and hunting and stuff. But I mean, I'm sure it looks goofy, but I think it's super, super cool because of how practical it is. And I wore it out. And of course, Adam's like, holy shit, like that vest is amazing. And so his wife had to get him one, and it just turned out to be like literally the exact same as mine. And so now we are matching vest bros.
I like how it's Adam liked my vest, so his wife had to buy him one.
You know how it is.
I love that. That's a very Adam situation.
Right.
No, that's great. No, I think your vests were cool. I probably should get
you.
one. But
Yeah. You got to get a hat too if you don't have one.
well, you're right. I have a big floppy sun hat, but that doesn't look adventurous when I'm in the woods. It
Right.
just looks like
Looks like you're gardening.
it looks like alternative goth girl trying to get a photo shoot, which is like half true. But
Right. I mean,
but it's it's no cryptozoologist hat. Um, I do a Joe Bob Briggs cosplay. I do. I have a bolo tie and everything. And I have my Joe Bob hat, but it's not good quality. It's cheap. It's costume. Anyway.
gotcha.
But yeah, no, it looked like you guys had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Well, how was your weekend?
It was okay. I didn't do anything as crazy. Wrote more Indrid Cold book. And yeah, I did go see the new Beetlejuice, and all I'm gonna say is, it was all right. I'll just leave it
Okay.
at that.
I mean, just looking at the cast, I would expect it to like at least be all right.
It was all right. It was okay. It wasn't my favorite, but and I'm not. You guys listen to me talk about my movies. I'm not a purist or anything. It was okay. I'll probably never watch it again. So people
Okay.
love it. People love it though. So clearly, I'm just the unpopular opinion, and that's okay too.
I have the hardest time being like re-enchanted by late sequels and remakes or reboots or any of that stuff. Like it just doesn't hit like I want it to, and it's probably just because I'm getting old. You know what I mean? Like, I hate the idea that I just am never going to be able to enjoy certain things like I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I also have to make my peace with the idea that that's true, and there's just not a whole hell of a lot that I can do about it.
Yeah, and that's when I go into these things, that's my expectation, right? I know it's not going to be as good as the original. So normally I'm not disappointed. Normally I'm like, hey, that was, I liked it. That was pretty good, whatever. This, I was just like, what the fuck did they do here? I don't understand. And that sounds worse than I gave it a 4 out of 10. That's what I gave it. And
Oh
if you've
wow.
seen it, I think people kind of probably understand why. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I almost never go to theaters anymore. There's so little that I want to see badly enough that I am not willing to wait until it's just streaming and I can watch it at home.
Yeah. Well, we were gonna go watch it at the drive-in, which would have been really cool. Going to the drive-in is a whole event, right? So it's better than going to the theater, 1000%. But the other movie that was playing was Trap, and I'm just like, I don't really care about that. And then, but I'd watch it, right? We're at the drive-in already, might as well. Or we just leave after, it's fine. But then my mom's dogs got really sick, so she couldn't go.
Oh.
She didn't want to commit to that anyway. And so we just went to the regular theater and watched it. There's better movies coming out, so.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
We'll see them when they're here. But I spent, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. You guys know how I feel about talking about politics on the show. I spent an embarrassing amount of time investigating the claims being made about the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, and there's a reason for it. So I'm sure people have heard by now. The claim is that there is an influx of Haitians in a little town, Springfield, Ohio, that are stealing pets and the local geese and duck population and killing them and eating them. The reason why, and this is kind of like it's kind of part of the news, I guess. We'll just segue into the next thing after that because I also have other cool local news. But the reason why this topic, was kind of something I had to look into. Normally, I'm just like, I can't. I'm so burnt out on politics. I just don't give a fuck about what anybody's saying or doing anymore. Who you're voting for, I don't care at this point. But I grew up in Springfield, Ohio, and I have, I can't throw a rock in Springfield without hitting a family member. Like, I have a massive family. My grandmother had 5 kids. They all went on to go have 5 or 10 kids, and so on and so forth. So It's kind of a personal subject to me because I know people that are there. I was just there at their fair like 3 weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and didn't notice an influx in Haitians that were there. There is an influx in Haitian immigrants. That part is true. Um,
Sure.
but man, I tried so hard to find evidence of them taking and eating animals, and I did not find any. And I
I
have talked
would
to too many people from there. At
I
this
would hazard a guess that that's because it's just a racist lie.
What?
Yeah,
Are
I
you
know. You
serious?
heard it here first, folks. No, you probably heard it here like 10th, but still, it's just a racist lie. And we're not going to get into politics, but
We're
I'll tell
not.
you what, the truth isn't political. And
It's
so
yeah, exactly.
when you hear a racist lie, it it transcends politics to note that it is a racist lie.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is worth noting that that is what is happening here.
Yeah. And it's just it's embarrassing. It really is, but it's concerning more than anything because now my hometown that I grew up in is a target for violence. The schools and everything
Yeah,
have been closed. The city buildings have been closed due to these bomb threats that are coming along. Probably, I mean, everybody's like, oh, it's the left doing it. Oh, it's the right doing it. Guys, it's probably fucking trolls from 4chan doing it. Let's be real. Who cares?
mentally ill people, probably.
Right. I mean, that's not the point. The point is, whether or not they're just baseless threats or because the internet thinks it's funny or it doesn't matter. Um, those people were my community. And so like I said, I deep dived it a little too much. Learned a lot about Haitian voodoo, actually. So that
That's
was
cool.
very interesting because it's just something that I never really looked into before. I suggest
Fun.
everybody look into it. You'll find that they don't sacrifice cats and dogs, it turns out, or geese. So,
Okay. Good to
um,
know. I
yeah.
feel better.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I know you guys have already heard enough. You don't come here to listen to stuff like that. Instead, let's pop over to a different local news story, which is kind of fun, actually, kind of scary, but kind of fun.
Okay.
So I shared this post on my Facebook page. A local woman said her son was out fishing at a local pond in Beaver Creek, Ohio, and he saw something very strange. As a matter of fact, took pictures of it. He saw what he believed to be an alligator in an Ohio pond.
Yeah,
So
I saw the pictures.
yeah,
It looked weird.
it looks gator-like. So I know exactly where this pond is. I have not gone up there to go investigate it. Here's the thing about alligators is they don't just live in water, and I don't really feel like getting attacked by an alligator. It might not be an alligator. It could have been a log. Could have been a river otter is like the skeptical explanation. Definitely could have been an otter. But yeah, I haven't gone to the area. I might. I know that the DNR was contacted and they're just like, well, until anybody, and this is their reaction, and this is why it's important to talk about this on the show. They're like, well, okay, but the pictures don't really show anything. So until somebody gets a clear photograph of it, we're not going to do anything. And
Yeah.
that's disappointing. It's scary because people frequent that area, and if there's just a fucking alligator, I mean, then they're in danger potentially.
Sure. Well, it's bad for everybody. It's bad for the alligator. People do let exotic pets go sometimes, though. So there are very credible accounts of alligators in areas that they shouldn't be.
Yeah,
So I mean, out of place alligators is a verified phenomenon.
yeah.
So I would at least take it seriously enough to be wary.
Yeah, I might. I mean, I might go out there and go check it out. Maybe we'll see. I got a busy week. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it can happen. My neighbor in Springfield, my white neighbor in Springfield, had an alligator one time. So that's a pet.
Okay.
Um, so it
Good
does
to know.
happen. And they didn't keep
Yeah.
it very long because, well, they get big and they require food, and
Yeah. They're,
Stuff like
they
that.
they don't love you because they're an alligator and they're
Right.
dangerous.
Yes, they like to eat. That's their goal. So, but it's been, it's kind of been a lot of fun having a local cryptid, for a minute. There's like a park here. It's called Delco Park, and somebody took a picture of the park and photoshopped an image of Nessie. And they're like, "Well, if you guys think the alligator is impressive, look at this." It's just a little
Nice.
pond there. So, and since I'm the local weirdo, it's been a lot of fun. Um, but that's it, really. That's all. That's my news.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that's all my
I've
news.
got a news. It's not alligators in Ohio,
Ugh.
but it is Mothman in North Carolina. So
Okay.
that's fun. Yeah. So we were contacted last month by North Carolina resident Megan Boyd, who wished to report her sighting of a mysterious winged being. So basically, like many other people recently, she saw me on Unsolved Mysteries and decided to reach out to see if I had ever received any accounts similar to hers, because what she had seen was sort of slightly different from the accounts on that episode. So her experience took place between 6 and 7 p.m. on November 1st, 2000 in Ruffin, North Carolina. So she was in high school at the time, and her then boyfriend was driving her home. They're on this old country road with no streetlights or anything, and it had just gotten dark because of the time of year, right? And they saw what she at first thought was a ghost decoration in the distance, high up in a pine tree by the road, since it was just after Halloween. That's naturally where her mind went, was this must be a leftover Halloween decoration that hasn't been taken down. But she was confused as to why somebody would put a ghost up that high, because it was very high up in that tree. And as they got closer, it became very apparent to her that it wasn't a ghost decoration at all. In fact, what Boyd said she had initially thought to be a Halloween decoration turned out to be something far stranger. Instead, she said it was a huge creature with wings. It was all white, not black like the other sightings that had been discussed on the show. And that was the detail that really stuck out to her in terms of something that set this apart from other sightings, was that the creature she had seen was all white. So it spreads its wings and jumps out of this tree and swoops down at their car while they're driving, passes them and scratches the top of it, and then it starts to follow them. So in a sort of strange mirror of the like Scarberry Mallet sighting in Point Pleasant, they take off and are chased by this thing. So she said that she thought her boyfriend was doing upwards of 80 miles per hour or even more while this thing was keeping up with them. And she described it as being at least 7 feet tall with a massive wingspan, and that the wings looked like bat wings, at least insofar as that they were translucent. But it had the body of a man with man-like long legs. So they eventually lose it, and they get back to her house. And when they look at the top of her boyfriend's SUV, sure enough, it has these huge scratch marks. And she tells her father, but of course, and we've heard this a million times before too, right? Her father just makes fun of her, and her siblings just make fun of her. They just tease her about this. They don't take it seriously, except for her brother eventually, because 14 years later, in 2014, around the same time of year, he saw the same thing about 10 minutes away from where she had her original sighting. That original sighting, of course, left a big impression on her. This is very impactful. So since then, Boyd said she's had several people tell her they've seen the same all-white flying humanoid with bat-like wings in the area. The month after her sighting, she also had a frightening experience involving a Ouija board. Now, this was December, the month after. I already said that. So, yeah, the month after her sighting in December. She has a friend staying the night who expressed interest in trying a Ouija board. I mean, I did that when I was younger. That's a normal overnight sleepover kind of thing. So the two girls decide to bring the board out, and while they're using it, this is where things start to get weird because she said the wind started picking up outside and she heard a dog howling. She also described a sort of inexplicable heaviness that seemed to fall over the room before the board spelled "get out." So immediately they are ill at ease, as anybody would, and they decide to stop. Now, Boyd told me that she actually threw it away not long after, and if I wouldn't have asked her if anything else unusual had happened sort of around that time, she probably wouldn't have mentioned it, which is also true of a lot of other witnesses. Always ask people that question. Now, that wasn't the only thing that occurred after her sighting, because after her encounter with that winged creature, she found herself suddenly afraid of things she had been perfectly comfortable with before. So she used to be the kind of person who liked to sleep outside sometimes. Her family had a trampoline, and in the summer months, she would enjoy going and kind of sleeping under the stars, which I think is a relatively normal thing to do. But after that sighting, for at least a year, she said, she just couldn't. She always felt like something was watching her. She felt exposed and vulnerable, and was just generally afraid to be out at night. And as a result, she stopped doing that. She stopped sleeping outside when it was nice out. She also would have these bizarre nightmares and would sometimes wake up and feel like somebody was watching her through her bedroom window. So this window was about 10 to 12 feet from the ground. And so you can only imagine what kind of entity, right, would be capable of looking through that were someone to actually be doing so. So all in all, an intriguing encounter leading to even more paranormal phenomena, which of course is one of the most interesting things about the Mothman and winged humanoid phenomenon. But anyway, I've been talking for a while. So what are your thoughts?
That's okay. There was a lot to share with that one. It's important. Yeah, I mean, this really, all of it really resonates with the Scarberry Mallet sighting, including the strange occurrences that happen afterward, the feeling of being watched. That's like to a T, Linda Scarberry and her experience with this creature. The fact that it's white doesn't bother me at all and shouldn't bother anybody else. We've had other white Mothman sightings. So that's not unusual. Did she mention anything further about maybe her brother having added experiences? I don't know if maybe you guys didn't get that far in the conversation or
No, we
anything you haven't
she
shared.
didn't mention anything. I think that maybe he hadn't divulged that necessarily.
Sure.
But it's entirely possible. Ideally, I would have been able to speak with him as well, but it just didn't happen.
Well, sure. Yeah, you can't make somebody talk to you in these situations. That's just the way it works. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it sounds. She is either intimately familiar with that sighting, because the added bonus stuff of kind of what Linda ended up going through later in life. It's not really something people know on like the surface level topic of like Mothman, right?
Right.
So she either knows it very, very well and is trying to replicate that same type of story, or all this shit really happened to her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
it's not
didn't
on
get.
mine.
Oh, totally. I didn't get the impression that this was a manufactured experience that was intended to mimic a previous sighting. And there are just some details that sort of stuck out to me. Like if this was meant to replicate a previous experience, then why not have it be black? Why not give it
Yeah.
red eyes? Why not include any other number of keywords, buzzwords, narratives, things that have already been included that would really cement that connection. It like that part of it just didn't add up. Not to mention the fact that like this witness did not seem to be very familiar with the overall Mothman phenomenon, as many of the people who have contacted me directly were not prior to watching that Unsolved Mysteries episode. Again, to people like you and I, Mothman is very well known. Mothman is something we're intimately familiar with. But for most people, even people who are interested in the paranormal, they have no idea. They don't, if they've even heard of Mothman, they have a kind of surface level knowledge of it. They probably aren't even familiar with specific witness sightings.
Right.
They're probably just familiar with whatever memes they've seen on the internet. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened to this person, but there's nothing about her report that would lead me to believe that what she was sharing wasn't an experience authentic to her.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds par for the course for Mothman sightings, and that's kind of it's more that's more of a believable experience to me than just, well, I saw this thing zoom across me and then that was the end of it, because like what I've learned from Mothman sightings is that that's never the end of it, that's just the beginning.
Right.
So I believe that, but man, that Ouija board was rude. I'll tell you that.
I know, right?
Rude
Get out.
motherfucker.
Dude, this is my house.
You're
You
right.
get
You
out.
get out. Yeah. The fuck? You guys got to start standing up to these, demon bullies. Fuck them.
Right? Let's
Just
see you
saying.
paying rent, Ouija board.
Uh, but no, that seems, like I said, I think that seems pretty authentic. That's a good one.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Excellent newsing all around.
Some good news. Yeah, some good newsing. We had Weird Ohio news. We have a winged humanoid, which is perfect for this week's episode. Because as you guys know by the title, I always say that like I'm really announcing something big here. Do you guys have any idea what we're talking about this week? I bet you don't.
I don't. What is it?
I bet you don't. You don't. Oh God.
I
We're
just
talking about
woke up.
it's the butterfly people of Joplin, Missouri.
Yay.
Yes and no.
I know, right? It's making the best of a it's making the best of a bad situation. It's it's one of those stories where it's it's got it's like the silver lining on a storm cloud. It's got some heroic kind of hopeful elements to it, but the overall like 2011 Joplin tornado, which of course I assume we'll probably start with, was terrible.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So it's a very interesting case nonetheless, and we'll, get to the speculation and kind of get to the theme of the sighting that you just reported there, the mirroring of this situation and maybe some other situations that we might be familiar with. So without further ado, for people that don't know, and maybe you don't know if it didn't affect you, in May 2011, the city of Joplin, Missouri, was hit by an EF5 tornado. Now, me and Tobias being Midwesterners, we kind of understand the weight of that statement, but some people might not. Full disclosure, my child, who's like a huge weather nerd, she's so excited that we're talking about this. This is her jam right here. She came home from school today, and I told her, and she was like, you're going to sit down, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this tornado. I can tell you the path and everything. I'm like, okay. I'm not going to get too much into that, but an EF5 tornado is the tornado. It doesn't get worse than that. There is no EF6. Tornadoes are measured kind of in a multitude of ways. They're measured in Of course, their speeds, their size, but more importantly, the destruction that they cause. And that was kind of added to the roster in recent years in tornado ratings. They used to be not quite rated based on that. But just because it's not an EF5 doesn't mean it can't cause significant damage, because you could have an EF3 that goes on for so long, it could take out technically more houses than an EF5 could.
Sure.
Just depends on the situation. So this was a really, really bad windstorm, to say the least. This EF5 tornado was about a mile wide. And
picture that. Picture how
mile.
wide that is. A mile wide storm that destroys everything in its path.
Yeah, a 1 mile wide tornado with speeds that were exceeded 200 miles per hour. They don't measure past 200 miles per hour because there's just fucking no point. Like,
Yeah.
what's it matter at that point?
Everything in a mile wide like diameter is just reduced to matchsticks by this thing.
Yeah, it is extremely, extremely dangerous situation to be in. So, of course, this town of Joplin, some people kind of talk about it like it's a small town. It really wasn't. It had a residency of, over 50,000 people. I mean, pretty significant population.
Yeah.
This happened to be on graduation day for the local town. So a lot of people were out and about, and the thing that makes this tornado particularly dangerous and particularly crazy is that this was a beautiful day in Joplin, Missouri. This thing just kind of came and went literally out of nowhere. And, again, being Midwesterners, we kind of understand, you can sit and watch the radar all you want. Sometimes shit just pops up, and it just, now it's happening. It's go time, right? Get in your safe spot. And this was very much that situation. The residents of Joplin only had 17 minutes to prepare in order to take cover, which, seems like a long time. But it's not when you're stuck in traffic or out at a graduation party or whatever the case is. This was a busy day for the town. And people really didn't have enough time to plan for this. So the EF5 comes, it rips through the town and destroyed well over 900 homes, and businesses, of course. And it killed a total of 161 people all in the span of 25 minutes.
Oh, it's wild. 4,000 total buildings destroyed, an additional 4,000 damaged. And also, in addition to that death toll, which is just devastating to a town that size. Everybody knew somebody affected by this. Oh, yeah. There were over 1,100 people injured as a result. So everybody was affected by this tragedy. It was the whole damn town lost something or somebody, or was affected in some way.
Yeah, it's ugly. We had the and I only speak on it because I lived through it. We had the Memorial Day tornadoes in 2019 locally in Dayton, Ohio, where we had multiple tornadoes happening at the same time. It was a fucking horrifying experience.
Yeah.
Our weather woman that was trying to, talk us through what to do was crying. And the worst tornado we got out of all that was an EF4 that only lasted just a couple of minutes. And there are still people to this day that just haven't. I mean, it was Memorial Day 2019. They didn't get the chance to recover before like COVID happened, right? And then that happened. So now they're trying to still pick up the pieces. There's still people. I mean, they lost their homes. It was crazy. It was insane. Yeah. That doesn't compare to this at all. I can't imagine. I can't. Just absolute devastation. This is a historic event that happened. My daughter informed me that this was actually part of a significant tornado outbreak that year. She said that there were, I believe she said 9 EF5 tornadoes. I might get the time frame wrong. See, I need to go get her on the microphone. Because it was just happening so much, of course, right in the middle of Tornado Alley is where that is, but this was like the worst of the worst. I mean, you can find many, many, many videos on it. If you want to see the destruction, you can. If you just want to learn about the Joplin tornado by itself, there's lots of information out there. We are not so much going to talk about the tornado itself, because we're going to talk about butterfly people instead.
Right. I feel like we've pretty much covered the actual tornado in terms of context. This is all the context you should need for us to get to why we're actually here,
Yeah.
which is something weird and miraculous.
Yeah, exactly. Again, if you want to learn more about it, you can. Or just I'll give you my kid's number or whatever. She'd love to talk your ear off about it, I promise.
Just giving out your kid's number to strangers. That feels safe. It just feels right.
They can't be all bad. They listen to this show, so.
So we know they're exclusively bad.
Yep. They're going to call her up what did the tornado's penis look like? And I'm just like, God damn it, this is my fault.
You should have seen that coming, honestly.
And the worst part is that I think she would give an answer. I think she would have an answer
I'm starting to wonder about it myself.
If you thought a mile was big, let me tell you.
Well, I mean, the tornado sure fucked that small town, so presumably it has one. Not to make light of the tragedy. It's a huge tragedy. I'm just saying.
It's terrible.
The low-hanging fruit was there, and I plucked it.
I'm proud of you for that.
Thank you.
It's pretty good. Anyway, so back to what we were talking about. Everybody has their own story about what happened that day in May 2011. And, of course, some people survived, some people didn't. The absolute devastation that people witnessed is crazy. Just reading the survivor stories of it is really interesting, really impactful, just to see, they were regular people trying to save people, trying to, dig out bodies and body parts. And, just they didn't know if their families were alive. They didn't know who was affected. They had no idea. But out of all of that came the butterfly people. All of a sudden, majority, I would say, were kids reporting having seen these strange winged humanoid beings, creatures, persons. They don't know. But they would report, seeing these things in varying capacities. Some of them were shielding them during the tornado. Some of them were shielding their families. Some of them were seen carrying the souls of the dead, presumably to heaven, carrying them away somewhere. Some of them were, picking them up and putting them places. I mean, these stories were just flooding in after the mass devastation of these tornadoes. And a lot of them were being reported to, healthcare workers, right? These are kids in the hospital getting checked out, and they're talking about, well, I'm okay because the butterfly people saved me or helped me or, whatever. Some of them are coming out later, people that saw their family members being, killed in the devastation are like, well, but then this butterfly person came and flew them away somewhere else. It was very, very, very bizarre. So let's talk about some of those specific accounts, shall we? You want to hear some of them? I pulled some just to kind of get a feel. Probably the most direct. There's a lot of I'm going to disclose this right now. A lot of urban legendy type of stories on this stuff. Because
Thank you. I was about to have to bring that up.
No, absolutely. A lot of this stuff are stories that resonate through the town as of today. There's no names associated with it or specific persons. But this is kind of the talk of the town of, well, I've always heard this story and this is what people have. But I want to go ahead and talk about a specific one that does actually have names associated with it because the kids have spoken publicly about what they've seen.
Perfect.
So this is going to be about, I think it's Lage Grisby, Lage Grisby, and Mason Lillard. Okay. Lage was 14 at the time. Lillard was 10 years old. So Lage and Mason are with their grandparents. They are heading to the local Home Depot. Their grandparents, Sharon and Rodney. Rodney goes inside to the Home Depot while Sharon stays out in the car with the kids. And while they're sitting there, the storm comes in. And they don't have much time to prepare for the storm, for what the storm is about to bring. So grandmother Sharon tells 10-year-old Mason to go ahead and, hide, get on the floorboards of the truck. They're in a big old pickup truck because they don't really have time to act or react before what's about to hit them. So while they are trying to wait out the storm, well, guess what? They get hit by this mile-wide, 200-mile-an-hour plus tornado. And it wasn't pretty. Their truck actually got thrown about 300 feet across the Home Depot parking lot. The Home Depot itself was completely destroyed. The whole roof of it was gone. It's literally crumbling. The walls are closing in. Sharon and Mason are alive, but they're trapped in the car, which you can go and look at pictures of the vehicle online if you want to. It's pretty much just crumpled up metal. They are trapped inside. Lage at that point was nowhere to be found. Rodney is in the store and actually walks out of that store unharmed, relatively unharmed, and starts looking for the truck. He was only able to recognize the truck because of the license plate, but he was able to locate it. And of course, people are coming in to try to help get them out of the car. Sharon was okay. Mason had been impaled by a metal rod through her shoulder, which, of course, medical professionals say if it were any closer, if it were anywhere else in our body, she'd be dead, right?
Right.
It's a miracle. And it really is. I'm not trying to downplay it, but, that's what they say. Lage was found amongst the rubble of the storm that was brought in. And initially, when they found Lage, he got rushed immediately to the hospital, but not to the hospital, to the morgue, because they thought he was dead.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until a little bit of time had passed, and an ER nurse was clocking on for her shift. And what a fucking nightmare to walk into at work. Let me tell you, if you think
Right.
you're having a bad day. And she sees the body of this 14-year-old boy, and she places her hand on his arm. And when she did, he screamed. And that's horrifying. So of course they rushed him back, over to the ER. He was in surgery. And was in surgery for about 6 hours and eventually in his life makes a full recovery. True miracle. But that's not all. Mason said that she gets on the floorboards and her grandma Sharon said, we need to pray. Let's all start praying. And that makes sense, right? And so they start praying together, and Mason had felt a hand touch her shoulder. And she looked over thinking that it's Lage, that's her cousin. Lage are not brother and sister, it's her cousin. And it was not. She said it was two figures. She specifically described them as angels wearing robes. One had blonde hair and one had brown hair. And of course, none of the other family members saw these angels. But this is probably... I'm not going to say it's the influence for the other sightings, but this is probably the most well-known account of this event, that came out of it. Because like I said, the family did come forward and did talk about it. So you can find those interviews online if you want to.
Well, it's very, very difficult to find firsthand accounts of people seeing these butterfly people. It's a little easier to find the accounts of healthcare workers, like clinical director Danielle Robinson, who have said that they have at least heard the stories firsthand themselves, or people that work for them have heard them. So it's not quite the level of pure urban legend where there's just no firsthand accounts anywhere, nor is there anyone who's ever heard one. But it is a little frustrating, I think, for people who come into it sort of expecting like the I don't know, like the aerial school, like UFO landing sighting where you have all these kids going on the
Right.
record, right? Like this is not that,
No.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the stories did spread like wildfire, and it was really just after this event happened.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was a lot of like Red Cross counselors who said that they were hearing these stories firsthand from children. And
Mhm.
then that sort of got out and started being spread. And then people kept talking about various encounters that folks were supposed to have had with these butterfly people, but there's no names or anything attached. And so it's difficult to say how much the encounters that are being repeated represent the actual phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
I think part of it is probably that it was mostly witnessed by children. I don't know if that makes people more reluctant to name them specifically, because obviously people are very protective of children and
Mhm.
should be, or if kids are kids, like they're not going to contact the local paper to share their story or something, right?
Right. Well,
Or
it's not
what?
like there
But
was a John Keel or a Gray Barker that hopped on the first plane over there, right, to go interview people about this stuff. That's kind of tends to be the issue with the paranormal, is like, because it's not really taken seriously.
mm,
We didn't really have anybody that was like logging these stories. There was no, how in poor taste would that be anyway? I'll be honest with you. If that happened if that happened during the Memorial Day tornadoes here in Dayton, Ohio, I wouldn't be fucking out there bothering these families that just lost everything about the fucking weird shit they just saw.
right.
you know that's just really in poor taste. So who knows, maybe just a lack of having somewhere dedicated to report this type of thing to, maybe because it's a bunch of children and usually their identities are heavily protected, especially with what they're saying to medical professionals, right? They're not going to put, it's confidential. Put
Oh
your
yeah.
situation out there for everybody.
Right.
But like you mentioned, there are some credible people who claim to have heard these stories continuously. School counselor Shelby Wilson ended up being one of the volunteers. She claims that, yeah, she's heard these stories. I mean, everybody has, allegedly, in Joplin, Missouri.
Right. And there's two stories in particular that, maybe they've changed with the passing of time and being retold, but generally speaking, like there are these two versions of these stories that I think have become the most popular. So in the first one, there's a mother and daughter who fled their vehicle as the tornado came close to them. Right, the girl is 3, maybe 4 years old, depending on which version of the story you're hearing, and they don't have any time to get to shelter. They're caught out in the open, right? And so they hit the ground, and the mother covers her child. In some versions of the story, they manage to make it into like a ditch or a culvert or something. Other times, they're just in somebody's front yard, and the mother supposedly then watches as the winds hurtle their car towards them, and she braces, knowing that they are about to be killed, but the tornado just passes and they're not hurt. And then the mother is astonished and says something like, you know, how are we okay? And the daughter starts speaking nonsense and says something like, weren't they pretty? And the mom, naturally confused, responds with, who, right? Like, who are you talking about? And the daughter then says something like, didn't you see the butterfly people? And again, there are a few different versions of that. And in some of them, the daughter is said to describe seeing the butterfly people also like ferrying men and women into the sky. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, some people have interpreted that as escorting the souls of the dead. And then there's another popular story that involves a father or grandfather and two young boys, and they're also trapped outside during the tornado. And in most versions of this story, the winds are so strong that the soles of the man's shoes are torn off, which is probably not a thing that really happened and is probably just a detail added to the story to give you an idea of how powerful the tornado was, right?
In case you didn't know. Yeah.
Right, yeah. But somehow, despite this tornado being so strong, no one is hurt. And again, it's one of the young boys, usually described as being around 3 or 4, just like in the other story, who says that he saw butterfly people hovering above them, offering protection. And so I think those are the two popular sort of I guess urban legend versions of the story. We don't know if they happened or not, but they're the ones that circulate most popularly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, I've got some others. I got a couple more that I picked up. Still not nearly as substantiated as the first telling of events with the angels. So this is from a well, we'll go with this one. I've got there was a young girl that was in the storm. She was actually swept up into the tornado. But while she's in the tornado, she is grabbed by one of these butterfly people who wraps her in its wings and brings her back down to safety. There's a child found in a crushed car that was strapped to a car seat. And the child was completely unscathed. And of course, the child claimed, well, it's because he was wrapped up into the wings of one of the butterfly people during the storm. I've got another young girl who lost her mom and her dog to the storm. And she's one of the people that claims that she saw one of the butterfly people carrying her mom away during the storm. And then, of course, it's my personal favorites. A frozen yogurt shop manager says that people had flooded the store in a panic. Hold on, my cat's trying to step on my computer.
Classic cat.
He succeeded. Anyway, frozen yogurt shop manager was saying that people were flooding the store in a panic. And, of course, he's panicking. He doesn't know what to do with all these people. But he had seen the windows of the storefront there. There were a few figures standing outside the window that were about 7 to 8 feet tall. And he says that while they didn't talk to him, they spoke to him telepathically and told him to get everybody to the storage freezer. And he did. And that storage freezer, of course, ended up being the only thing standing after the tornado. So
storage freezers are super tough.
Super tough. Yeah. If you don't got a basement, storage freezer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you happen to live in a house with a storage freezer, but not a basement, then where the hell do you live?
Right. What do you, I don't know what you're
do you
doing.
like live in the Dairy Queen? I don't understand.
That'd be kind of cool. I mean,
that would be cool.
Why not?
I shouldn't live in the Dairy Queen. I would be very unhealthy.
They got food now too. They've grown since I
love
kid.
like the grill and chill has been around since I was a little kid. I think it's older than I am. And I love a grill and chill. Not all Dairy Queens are grill and chills, but they all should be.
Those soft pretzels are pretty banging. I'm just saying. And they're like
they got
$2.
a good chicken strip basket. There's nothing not to like about there's nothing not to like about Dairy Queen. I don't know how I managed to digress.
That's why you shouldn't live there, though.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, some variations of the stories. What were the kids describing seeing? I mean, in the first account, which again was more of a personalized account, definitely seemed more angelic. But a lot of the descriptions of what came out of this were colorful winged humanoids.
Right.
Allegedly. It's hard to pinpoint because, again, it's not like we really have real reports of these kids reported. This is all just kind of word of mouth at this point.
Right. Well, even the stuff that has been documented, like here's something from a Clay and Melissa Morgan. So they and their 4 children, along with Clay's mother, lived in a house in Joplin, right? And so they were at home when the tornado hit, and they were huddled in a central hallway, and the dad is like holding this mattress over them, And tornado dismantles their house, just takes the damn house down. And they're thrown outside, kind of riding the mattress that he was holding at that point. And they end up outside with their house completely obliterated. And they find everybody except for Eli. Eli was 5 years old at that time. And so they are just frantically looking for him for several minutes before they find him under a carpet nearby. And later on, he tells them that he saw a man with brown hair when he was inside that carpet. Now, some people have sort of seized onto that and decided that it's evidence of some kind of divine intervention. But his mom said that Eli has mentioned the detail only once. And as a result, she's afraid that he may have actually seen the body of the man who lived next door.
Oh.
Right. And so you can imagine how when these stories are spread, people, and I don't blame people at all for this. This is a horrific situation, and the idea of children having to go through this is heartbreaking. It is devastating just to think about. So it doesn't surprise me at all that in the retelling of a story like that, if there is an opportunity to perceive it in a more favorable way, to add some element of the divine that would just give you hope in a hopeless situation, that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that people would do that. And I have to wonder how often that is happening in the retelling of these horrible, tragic stories that came out of that tornado.
Oh, absolutely. The this event was so significant, not just the tornado, but the butterfly people chatter was so significant that the butterflies kind of become that town's mascots. They
Yeah.
actually have the Butterfly Memorial Park. They're all about butterfly conservation in the town. All of their signs and stuff include butterflies at this point. And, the media and the townspeople kind of felt like having the butterfly as a symbolism, not just because they had these strange stories, going around about these weird entities, allegedly, but, because it was fitting for a butterfly, because as we all know, caterpillars, right, melt themselves down into goo and then reshape into butterflies, and
It's beautiful. It's a
transformative.
miracle.
Yeah, right, exactly. I know that in your household, you guys are butterfly people. Emily's butterfly people
My,
for sure.
my wife raises butterflies. I do not.
She's a butterfly. She's a butterfly people.
She is. She does great work.
She does.
Like I am very supportive of like her citizen science endeavors,
Yeah.
because she has had a more positive impact on society than I ever will at this
Well,
point.
that's true.
I mean, seriously, like let's face it. She's out there like trying to combat climate change and the destruction of pollinator species, and I'm just sitting here talking about fucking Mothman. Like which one of us is really contributing to society, honestly? But I'm just saying. So yeah, I am really proud of her for that. But don't give me any credit for it because she does all the work.
Yeah. Well, true. That's a good point. No, Emily's great people, and I appreciate her butterfly efforts. And I want to raise butterflies, but I'm intimidated. I think I'll kill them. I don't know. Anyway,
I mean, you can't do much of worse of a job than society at large is currently doing with like monarch butterflies and stuff.
that's a good point.
If you, I mean, seriously, like if you are interested, there are a lot of good videos out there. Hell, Emily's got a TikTok account where she shares a lot of videos about raising monarchs and good sort of good practices surrounding that for anybody who'd be interested in actually doing it. So it's a lot of work, but it's not as hard as you would think. It's just you got to do it every day, basically.
Yeah,
You know.
she's always I'm always watching her stuff. It's fun. I'd like to live vicariously through her, you know.
There you go.
Um, but anyway, the point being, butterfly transformation is like it's a good change, right? It's a good sign. It's very empowering to people, which is why a lot of women in their 20s get a butterfly tattoo, I think. And
I could see that.
I don't know. It's a very empowering symbol. But again, I don't think that would have happened. I don't think they would have adopted this butterfly mascot without the butterfly people tails running around. I don't think anybody would have even considered that. They did people claim that after this tornado ripped through, they had an influx of an actual butterfly population in the town.
Yeah, actually, and interestingly enough, there is another story that emerged out of this tragedy dealing directly with butterflies. So Emily Huddleston was a 14-year-old high school student and cheerleader when she was caught in the tornado. So her family was driving home from her brother's high school graduation, as you mentioned, was happening, and their car was tossed into the air. So it flew like 2 blocks. If you can imagine how terrifying it would be to be in a car that got picked up by a tornado and thrown 2 damn blocks before crashing to the ground. She was the only one seriously hurt, with a chunk of debris lodged in her thigh. So she's got a hell of a scar from that to this day, but otherwise she recuperated. It was tough. It took a couple of months, but she went from a wheelchair to walking on her own in that time. And interestingly enough, as she tells it, it was summertime, so 2 months after May, which is when the tornado hit. She's standing in the backyard of where her house used to be, because it was destroyed in the tornado as well. And this butterfly lands on her. It was a monarch butterfly. And then she says other butterflies came and landed on her too. And she says that this is a thing that that kept happening to her all summer. So all summer long, she says she's got this connection to butterflies approaching her, landing on her, and she didn't necessarily think anything of it until she started hearing the stories about butterfly people that were circulating through town at that time. And that's when everything started to kind of make sense to her. And this is a direct quote. So at that point, she says, I look at them as my angels. I really do. So that gives you some idea of the meaning that that butterflies have sort of taken on in this community as a result.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So to talk about the potential downside of it all, of course there is a giant cloud of skepticism over it all. And Tobias, you kind of touched on it with that little boy under the carpet story.
Yeah.
So there is something that happens. It's called the third man phenomena, where you can be in a life or death situation and kind of dream up like a third party, like somebody that wasn't in it with you or in your group or whatever, who kind of comes to the rescue and fixes whatever problem you're having. This is very much a real psychological phenomena. It's why we get near-death experiences where, well, it could be a reason why we get near-death experiences where people are let's say in a really bad car accident, and all of a sudden their dead relative is there and is helping them out of the situation. That's just an example, of course. But again, it is something that we see people who experience near-death experiences have. So a psychological phenomena, maybe a paranormal phenomena, maybe, who knows, but we recognize that it happens, whichever side of the pendulum you want to swing it to.
Sure.
Now, in cases of trauma, and especially severe trauma like this, and this is severely traumatic. I wasn't even in the Memorial Day tornadoes, you guys, and it's still traumatizing to this day. Um, you know, your brain definitely is going to go into some weird survival mode. So having that type of third person entity there is not far fetched, and it's not something that's just it's not something that just involves kids. And of course, these stories don't just involve kids. It just seems kids seem to be the target. I don't know why exactly. Allegedly, there were adults that had similar experiences as well. But that would, psychologically speaking, scientifically speaking, would check out for people who think that they saw an entity that wasn't there. Now, seeing an entity that everybody else sees also, makes it a little harder to swallow that this is just easily explained away with psychology for a lot of people digging into this. Tobias, do you have any words on that statement? I lost steam in my statement.
Sure. No, I totally get it. So you have to wonder. It's sort of a chicken or the egg kind of situation, right? So you have all of these stories coming out about butterfly people. And so you have to wonder, is this something that spread as a result of a single story that involved butterfly people? Or were there separate instances of people seeing or thinking they saw or reportedly interacting with butterfly people? Now, given the information that we have and the number of people who have gone on the record, which is not very many, I would be more inclined to suspect that what we have is that particular detail being added to stories. And when it comes to kids, people like to think of kids as like these super honest, innocent storytellers when it comes to relating their experiences, and maybe they are on some level. But the other thing that kids are is very impressionable, and they also really want to please authority figures. And it's not unusual. We saw this in, like, say, the Satanic Panic. Like, this was
Mhm.
all too common in the most tragic way. It's not uncommon for a child to repeat something that didn't happen enough to where they start to believe it, and then they really do believe it. That's just how imaginative kids are, and that's how real imagination can be, and that's sort of the psychological effect that kids are vulnerable to. And so, again, the idea that somebody came up with this butterfly person thing, and it sort of caught among kids who heard it once it started circulating, and they added it to their own experiences. I have no difficulty buying that as in explanation. I don't know that to be true, so put down your fucking torches and pitchforks. I know. Here comes Tobias with the anti-fun police, but it is a perfectly reasonable belief to have about this phenomenon and the circumstances surrounding it. So I wouldn't blame anybody at all if they thought that was the case. And the other part of this, and people have gone on the record about this part, is once the stories started to circulate among children, adults didn't want to take that away from them. And
Yes.
this is true. And there are multiple adults, counselors, like we mentioned the Red Cross counselors before, specifically, who were not pushing back against this narrative at all, because in a situation like that, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have these quotes in front of me, but the sentiment was, in a situation like that, when you have the opportunity to allow children to still believe in the idea of a force for good that can bring them comfort and help them carry on in a situation that would otherwise feel hopeless, in a situation where they at far too young of an age might have otherwise had to confront the harsh reality that life is chaotic and unfair and terrible things can happen at any time. If you have the opportunity to allow children to carry on believing that that isn't true, that there is somebody out there looking out for them, some higher power, and that gives them comfort, you fucking do it. You let the kids have that one, you know? And so I think there was a lot of that. I think there was a lot of people who just didn't, after everything these children had been through, didn't want to take the butterfly people away from them too. They had been through enough.
Yeah. Just to kind of put it in perspective, let's play a game. Let's do a little imagination. Let's do a little role play. We'll start from the adult perspective because that's a little easier for us to dive into. You're one of these counselors. You're talking with one of these kids. You have a 5-year-old in your office, and they are they're telling you, recounting to you the story of watching one of their relatives get literally ripped apart by a tornado. And during that story, they tell you that an angel came and took their soul to heaven. You're not going to be like, yeah, that didn't happen, kid. You're just not.
Right?
Fucking dare you to. You know? You're not going to do that. On the flip side of that, you were a 5-year-old child. Your whole family survived even, but you lost your home, you lost your pets, you lost everything that you had. You're now living in a weird disaster shelter, a little pop-up shelter with all these other people. Of course, to a child, that young, a parent's attention is like the best thing in the world. And you hear everybody talking about these butterfly people. So you say that you saw these butterfly people also hovering over your family, protecting your home, whatever the case may be. All of a sudden, guess who's got a little bit of attention?
Yeah.
It's not far-fetched to think that these stories could be made up for whatever coping mechanism was needed at the time.
Yeah. And
Um,
the thing about it is, once the kids start telling that story, it becomes real to them, and
yeah,
it is integrated into their memory, and they're not lying about it anymore because
yeah,
they really believe it.
yeah. And we kind of touched on that in and of itself on the show before. If these people believe that this weird thing happened to them, then to them it happened, and that's it. It's real. It
Oh yeah.
happened. So I can totally understand the sentiments of the skeptic in this situation. But I do kind of want to look at it. I want to dip into the woo a little bit.
Sure.
Um, because before we go further, I largely agree with Tobias. But I do think these stories stem from something. I think maybe somebody saw something fucking weird like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
maybe I'm not coming
sure.
down firmly on one side or the other right now. Like you, I just want people to understand that when they hear the skeptical explanation for this, don't get mad because you can't. There's nothing to prove the opposite. So if people
Yeah,
believe the skeptical side, that's their right. And there's
yeah,
no good evidence to convince them otherwise. So just be okay with it because it sounds reasonable.
yeah. Exactly. But I want to talk about from, like I said, a scope that maybe just even one of these stories is true.
Mm.
And if we look at the description of what people were describing at the time, I don't know if you've heard of it, Tobias, but some people say this sounds a lot like Mothman.
I'm sorry. I don't know what that is.
Oh man, you should. There's a couple books you should read. I know you don't
Well,
like to read, but
I can't read. So
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, thanks
um,
for airing my shame out on the podcast.
just so everybody knows, we can't let them forget.
Right.
But some people will go instantly, oh, it's Mothman. But then there's people that are like, they're just like, they're crazy about being like they can't be Mothman because Mothman's a bad guy.
Right, like they know Mothman. Like Mothman used to beat
Right.
them up and take their lunch money.
They're like, it can't be Mothman. It's like Mothman's good cousin or something, and it's like, what the fuck? It's like their good twin brother. He's
I
the
have
evil one.
anytime I have to make a decision, there will be like a Mothman on one shoulder and a Joplin
Yes.
butterfly person on the other, and like the Joplin butterfly person's just like, no, Tobias, don't steal that cookie, and then the Mothman's like, fucking take that cookie.
Yep. I wish I could. I wish I was creative enough to make little shoulder Mothmen, a little good and bad. Anyway,
Right.
so it's really funny to see the discourse when we are talking about this in a high strangeness perspective, because it's just ridiculous. But if we do look at just the physical description alone, let's say this was a colorful winged humanoid that somebody experienced somewhere, a kid, adult, doesn't matter. I found that perspective interesting because if you've read the Mothman prophecies and you listen to the show, so I know you did read it at some point in your life, um, and and you listen to the show, so you know how much we talk about John Keel and how he's really good at exaggerating some of these sightings. But one point that he hasn't exaggerated, to my knowledge, are some of the sightings that we've gotten with this type of strange phenomena. These things are like glimmering. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't know how to describe it. But I can tell you that that's what I saw, kind of, when I saw the Mothman. It has a weird effect to it. It doesn't belong in reality, and there's like something really weird about it. The best way I like to describe it to people, and this might also be an obscure reference when I try to explain what this looks like, is if you've ever seen the TV show Ash versus Evil Dead. Tobias, have you seen that one?
I have, yeah.
And they summon that weird glitchy demon and like that bookstore, and it kind of
Sure.
follows them, and it's kind of like glitching in and out of reality. It's kind of like that, which I feel like some people can kind of misinterpret as like a type of glimmer. Now, is that a far fetch then to say that you got kids misrepresenting it as colorful? Potentially, depending on their perspective of it. I don't think that's far fetched. That's I would go ahead and put in line with a similar experience in the phenomena. I would buy that.
Well,
I would buy that.
how about this? Let's try this on and see if it fits. If this phenomenon is reflective of the subconscious of the observer, could it be that children, generally being more innocent, would have butterfly creatures on their mind more than or more often than terrifying, red-eyed, demonic-looking things,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's why they would see that instead of the scarier things that adults see, because children, very luckily, at least in a lot of instances, hopefully, ideally, right, don't have the same fears and responsibilities and things that a grown-up does. And so, hopefully they would have less of that darkness in them that seems to grow as we get older and we figure out how the world works, what it's capable of, and our place in it. So yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense to me.
I mean, depending on who's reporting it, let's just take the winged humanoid phenomena as a whole. If you have just everyday regular people and they're experiencing this just outside of their normal everyday life, nothing significant's happening, um, they're going to automatically have a preconceived notion that it's negative. If you have an adult and this thing is interacting in your world and it's doing something positive. It's happening during a traumatic event, and it's having a positive impact on what you're experiencing. All of a sudden, it's an angel.
Mhm.
But then in this case, you have a child, and they are again seeing this positive thing, but they're not referring to this as the kids aren't referring to this as an angel. That was a name that the adults were, subscribing to this creature. They
Uh-huh.
were like, "Oh, these are angels." The kids were saying butterfly people.
Right.
So the perspective shifts in the narrative make a lot of sense if we are talking. If these stories are true, it does check out. Now, I've never talked to any witnesses of the butterfly people. I would love to. It's 2024. I would love for some of these child witnesses to come forward and, open up about their story and talk about what they experienced. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. So I can't really judge the experiences one way or the other because, I don't know them and I don't know what they saw exactly because there's no real reports on that. But just on a very surface level, I mean, it does kind of fit that narrative a little bit. Just saying, it does kind of look like that. Now, people deny this that live in Joplin. So that was one of the things. Of course, I like to do. I'd like to get into the culture of where this is happening. I talked
Sure.
about the Haitian thing in the beginning of the episode because I want to get into the culture. You don't really know what the fuck is going on in Springfield, Ohio, unless you're there. you know. So I digged into a lot of local groups for Joplin residents just to kind of get a beat on what they think about the phenomena. And there's a lot of people, this makes them so mad. And there's a good reason for it because it's tied to this significant tragedy where guess what? They fucking lost something. So where the fuck were the butterfly people for them? You know?
Great question. I mean, a
And
bunch of people died, even more people were hurt. Yeah, that's a good question.
and they hate this. They hate this, and they insist that the butterfly symbolism along the town isn't because of the butterfly people. It's just because of the symbol of the butterfly, and they're just in complete denial. That any of this was ever a thing. You know, which that guess what? That is their trauma coping mechanism. They're not going to cling to this in a good light because the butterfly people didn't come and protect them. They feel rejected in a way, and they're allowed to feel that way.
Mhm.
Um, of course, when their whole community was clinging on to this little shred of hope somewhere in this feel good story, they didn't experience that aspect of this devastating situation that they were in.
Right.
Um, and that's fair. And guess what? Guess where we see that happen also? A little event that happened in the '60s, the Silver Bridge collapse.
What?
Yeah,
Are
I know,
you
right?
are you telling me that the citizens of Point Pleasant in the 60s weren't immediately connecting Mothman to this horrible tragedy?
I am.
Yeah,
And I'm telling
nobody
you that
did.
people now fucking
Nobody
hate it.
did before Keel. Like, of course they didn't. That's crazy. Only a crazy person would do that.
Some people hate it. They hate the Mothman statue because it reminds them of a worse time. And people just act like, well, why do the residents? Let me tell you something. Mothman Festival's this weekend. You know who you're not going to see there? Locals.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely go on vacation that week.
Oh yeah, they do. They don't go anywhere near except for the shop owners, right? Of
Right. If
course, they
I
got
owned a restaurant or something, sure.
yeah, hell yeah, but that's not who goes to this. And there's a reason for it. I mean, again, this is a symbolism of something tragic that happened. Not because they think the Mothman himself caused it or anything, it's just because to them it's fucking stupid. How could you even think that this being exists in such a fucking tragedy? And again, they're not wrong for feeling that way.
I agree with that part of it.
Yeah.
Like um I think I've been pretty outspoken about w- how I view the connection of Mothman to the Silver Bridge and how exploitative of that tragedy I see that to be. I think that it is exploiting a tragedy for entertainment purposes, which is gross. Don't do it.
No. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. So there are mirrors in the two tragedies. There are, and it's important for us to recognize them for what they are, and to recognize that like these people aren't just doing it to be a buzzkill. You guys,
Right.
like this means something to them for real. And they have every right to feel the way that they do about it, But again, there are, alongside the people that hate it and denounce it all, there are plenty more people that have a story. They know somebody or knew somebody, or their grandma saw it, or whatever the case
Oh,
is.
sure. People
Um,
are seeing something. If we're talking about Mothman, people are seeing something. I just think the connection to the Silver Bridge is nonsense.
it is nonsense. Yeah, no, I agree. Just like all of this, I don't know if a group of heroic butterfly people descended on the town of Joplin, Missouri, to help save a select few folk and take others wherever they were taking them. I can't say that for sure. I can't say that it was Mothman that was doing it. I don't know how many Mothmen there are. Tobias doesn't know how many Mothmen there are. Um, Nate probably knows how many there are, but he's not speaking. So, he says there's 6. So, I believe him.
Sure. I mean, as like based on how many I've seen, there are 0. So I could
I
not
saw
tell you.
one, but it
Well,
was just I don't.
I've talked to a lot of people who said that they've seen something, and I believe that they've seen something that they can't
At least
explain.
one.
So
But again, even somebody that's seen one, I still can't tell you that that's the same fucking Mothman that chased, the Scarberries and Mallets to the TNT area. I don't know. I didn't
right.
ask him. Okay. I should have. But
Yes.
I was more concerned about not experiencing what I was experiencing. So there's that.
Write it down on your arm or something so you don't forget if it happens again.
Next time I start to run away and I'm like, wait, I got a question.
Right. Hold on a second. It's written on my arm.
Get it tattooed there.
Yes. And then thank me later. Be like, hey, Tobias, great idea. Thank you for that.
Just, start writing down different questions for different creatures that I encounter. Start writing down a bunch for Indrid.
Absolutely. Like you run into a dog man and you're like, shit, hold on. Where did I write that down? You're like taking your shoes off to see where you had it tattooed on you.
People are like, what does all this mean? What are all these tattoo meanings? And I'm just like, I just really forgetful.
Yeah, there's a system.
Do what you got to do. But again, just going back to the whole situation. I can't say that this did or did not happen. I would say that, like Tobias, you mentioned, we've got some credible people that are saying that they've heard from people that it happened.
Yeah.
But that's what we have. So it has a little more credence than your local urban legend, but it seems to have a little less than, say, Mothman sightings, right? Because at least we
Yes.
have like direct witnesses.
Yeah, I've
This
spoken
one we
to
don't really.
dozens of people at this
Yeah,
point, like directly,
yeah,
that have said they have seen something. So,
yeah. And I've never spoken with them. But looking into a little bit further, I did come across other anecdotal stories, which I didn't talk to these people, just other people on the internet that say that they were in maybe a similar tragic event, that they saw something similar or experienced something similar. So I thought that was interesting. But we can't rule out that third man phenomena. We can't rule out that this isn't just trauma. We
mhm.
don't really know.
Yeah,
That's the fun of it. We have no idea. You know. Um, so I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I want to believe, and so I will go ahead and let my confirmation bias win with this one. I think something happens. But I would love to see more. Like I said, if those kids would start talking now, that would be so fascinating to me.
sure. I mean, the best time to get it on the record was in 2011. The
Mhm.
second best time is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to try to force anyone to come up with a story or anything, but I'm just saying, if maybe you grew up there, maybe somebody that lives there, whatever, just let them know that if they did experience some type of strange phenomena, there is a community for them who isn't going to laugh them out of the room. you
Yeah,
know we definitely take these topics very seriously, and I'm sure you could find myself, Tobias Whalen, different people that are more than willing to hear your story, and finally kind of put a little more credibility behind this. Or maybe it didn't happen at all, and we're all it is hope. Like I said, a glimmer in this literal shitstorm that they had, and if that's what they needed to rebuild as a city, then that's fine too. That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah. It would be even more interesting. One of the kids that admitted to seeing butterfly people eventually came forward and said, "Yeah, I made it up."
Wouldn't surprise me at all. But until that happens, we won't know.
It is truly unsolved at this point.
Exactly.
I think. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. Tobias, do you have any? I guess I don't really have anything else to add here. Am I missing anything?
No,
It's such a
I don't.
short episode. What the fuck?
I mean, it's an hour and a half, which feels short to us, but only because our episodes are too long. I think this is a perfectly reasonable length for this, especially for this particular topic, because there is so little credible information from direct witnesses as sources. You can sit there and quote second or third party witnesses all day, and it doesn't add up to much. It really doesn't. That's not worth much in terms of establishing the validity of a phenomenon. I mean, it is, like you said, it is somewhere between in urban legend and a more established series of sightings like a Bigfoot or a Mothman or something. It you know it's also literally one instance, and so since it's only happened the one time that we know of, that also gives us a much smaller sample size to work from, and so there's just less information about this in general. What I will say is the same thing that I always say, and that is, I wasn't there. I don't have any evidence that anybody involved was lying or making things up. And so, while that doesn't mean that I have to credulously believe in the objective reality of this phenomenon, it does mean that I am not willing to write it off, and I just find myself in that place of utmost comfort for me, which is not knowing. Did this really happen to these people? I have no idea. Um, I if somebody chose to believe that there was some sort of psychological explanation, like I had mentioned earlier, about how children, are relatively easily influenced, and the ease with which memories can sort of be altered until things seem real, especially if you're a child and you're being encouraged to remember things a certain way. Great. Okay. Totally. Like I don't think that anybody should come down real hard on one side or the other. But if somebody did, I wouldn't be super mad about it. The other side of that coin is, if somebody really firmly believes that this was otherworldly influence at work, be that angels or whatever you believe in, okay, great. I'm not taking that away from you either, because I have no idea. I think that this thing, whatever it is bigger than us all at this point, regardless of which side you fall on, or if you're somewhere in the middle like me. And we'll probably never know. We'll probably never know definitively what or if people saw that day. What they saw, or if they saw anything at all. And we just are going to have to be okay with that, like is so often the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will categorize it in my many winged humanoid cases, but it's no smoking gun. It doesn't prove anything. Doesn't disprove anything either, you know.
Right.
Um, and we're just gonna leave it for what it is. And maybe sometimes, whatever the case is with this particular situation, I am a believer in the winged humanoid phenomena as a whole, um, being mostly positive rather than negative. And at minimum, it was a way to draw the community together, to help them get through this fucking difficult time. Now, would they have needed that that camaraderie if it wasn't for the fact that they were hit by an EF5 tornado? Probably not, but here we are. I'm just going to take it for what it is, and let those people have their story. Why not? Or
Yeah.
not have their story if they hate it. Whatever.
Sure. I mean, worst case scenario, you've got a story that made a bunch of kids feel better about the worst event of their lives.
Yep.
Like, just if you don't have good evidence to the contrary and it's not hurting anybody, let them have that one. Just let them have it.
Yep, it's not up to me. It's not up to you. It's not up to any of us, but the people who this affected directly. And however, whatever they need to get through that trauma in their lives, that they need to, cling to some type of belief because of it. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, especially because we don't know better. It's easy
No.
for us outside of that situation to look at it and go, oh, well, that's silly, But when you've had something like that happen to you, I imagine the impossible feels a lot more possible than it did the day before the mile wide tornado destroyed your whole fucking town.
Yeah. Yep. And thankfully, a lot of us, probably most of us, have no clue what that feels like, and hopefully, we never do.
Yes.
So who are we to tell these people anything? Just a couple of investigators with the podcast. I don't know. It's a compelling story, and I'll say that. If anybody asks me about it, I'll tell you how I feel about it.
Sure.
I hope it's true. If it's true, it has tones of Mothman to it. I would agree with that. And that's it. There's nothing else to say.
Yeah. I want it to be angels. Of course I do. Of course I want that. You'd have to be a psycho to not want that to be true. Yeah. But I don't know that it is. I don't know that it isn't, but I don't know that it is.
So there you go. That's the butterfly people of Joplin, Missouri. Definitely take a look at some topics that you come across. This one being one of them. It's fun. Don't bother the people of Joplin, Missouri. But if you do have a genuine interest in their situation and their tornado, just even the storm alone, it is fascinating if you're into that type of thing. Like I said, check out their local resources. Sometimes Google is not your friend, and it's not that it's bad. It's just that there's a lot that you don't know unless you get intimate with the culture of a city. And I think there's a lot more value in trying to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Talk to the locals. Do that. It's so interesting. You guys have no idea. You have no clue about any of this stuff until you are standing in their small town and you're listening to the local people tell you about it. It's so neat.
Yes.
I promise. Fulfill your time with stuff like that. And maybe less time, just kind of living through it through podcasts and things. Definitely. You should still listen to this podcast, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, just this one. This is the important one.
Yeah. Listen to it on your way to these small towns to go listen to it from the residents, and then fact check us.
Perfect.
With a 5-star review.
Yes. Just leave the 5-star review.
Yeah, that's it.
As a punishment. If we got something wrong.
So anyway, guys, before we go, just a reminder again, both Tobias, Whalen, and myself will be at the Mothman Festival this weekend. Both of us will be there. You can come say hi. I will only be there Saturday. Tobias will be there longer, but he's working. So
I mean, I'm gonna be out and about. I'll be the tall, handsome genius in the black leather hat. So if you see me, just say hi. Otherwise, I will be as elusive as the Mothman probably because I am there doing research. So
yeah. So it'll be a lot of fun. And if you guys are not subscribed to our Patreon, you should be. Patreon.com/WednesdaysTalk, because we're probably gonna include some exclusive content from the Mothman Festival. So just saying, you're not gonna get that anywhere else. I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you're making bad decisions if you're not there. So there's that. But with all that being said, you guys, we'll see you back here next Wednesday.